Welcome to Leaf Rubbings using watercolor pencil with Daisy Bingham. For this project, you will need fresh leaves, watercolor pencils, watercolor brushes, a small container of water, white paper, and a piece of scrap paper. This project begins with a trip outdoors. Autumn is the perfect time to head out and look for leaves for leaf rubbings. You'll want to look for leaves with prominent veins. Once you arrive home, you'll need to make sure that your leaves are dry and there's no little droplets of water. You can pat them dry with a nice cotton cloth or a piece of tissue. To begin, place a leaf vein side up onto a scrap piece of paper. Place a clean piece of white paper on top of the leaf. Begin coloring with a watercolor pencil. If you use the side of the pencil point, you'll get more coverage. I like to find the edges of the leaf and work around. Be careful where the stem meets the leaf. This tends to be a bulkier area and holes are easily poked. If you do poke a small hole in the paper, don't worry, most small holes are not seen in the finished leaf rubbing. In fact, I poked a hole in this rubbing. It seemed pretty dramatic at the time, but now the only way I can find it is by holding it up to the light. There are several ways to approach the leaf rubbing. Before you begin, think about the color palette you would like to use. Consider whether you would like the pencil strokes all one way or different ways. Don't forget about the edges of the paper. You can put leaves all the way up to the edge and even over the edge if you like. You can use multiple leaves with multiple colors like I'm doing on this rubbing. These are all different leaves from my garden. I chose a very limited color palette, blue and purple with a dash of orange, which is the complementary color to blue. Another option would be to use a single leaf and a single color, like this rubbing of a Japanese maple. In this Watercolour rubbing, I use several different leaves from the same plant. In this example, you can see I also use pencil strokes all in the same direction. Once you've finished the leaf rubbing, it's time to get out your watercolor brushes and some water. The water will soften the watercolor pencil marks and give a watercolor feel to your work. Before you begin, think about how you would like to approach the next phase. If you add lots of water, the details of the rubbing will be lost. So stop a moment and think about what areas you would like to be more watercolor-like. Sometimes I focus on background areas. Sometimes I like to follow the prominent veins of the leaf. And other times I will soften one side of the leaf with water while leaving one side alone. Play around, see what you like, see what works for you. Once you have wet areas on your paper, you can go back in with the watercolor pencil and make some darker areas. You can even dip your watercolor pencil into the water before placing it onto the paper. The water will make the watercolor pencil darker and more vibrant. When your paper is dry, you'll notice it's very wrinkled. There are at least two ways to remedy this problem. You can place the paper in a heavy book and let time straighten it, or you can use a dry, hot iron to press the paper flat. I will use my Watercolor rubbing to give an example of how you can use the leaf rubbing as a starting point for another piece of artwork. To begin, I made a drawing on a blank piece of paper. It's difficult to erase on top of watercolor pencil, so I made the drawing first and then lightly traced the drawing onto the leaf rubbing. Next, I used India ink to color parts of the Korimako, or bellbird. Being a water-based medium, the India ink blends nicely with the watercolor pencil. I added more color onto the bird's body and into the surrounding leaves. To add some highlights back into the piece of work, I added a small amount of white acrylic paint at the very end. This is the finished Korimako after it has been ironed. If you use an iron on your work, make sure the artwork is face down on a clean sheet of paper before you begin ironing. It is recommended that you use the iron before adding acrylic paint, as acrylic will melt with a hot iron. And finally, a bonus pea waka waka, because any project inspired by my garden would not be complete without a little pea waka waka. I hope you get out and enjoy collecting leaves and making leaf rubbings. I look forward to seeing what you do, and thanks for watching.